Well, let's see how this goes. I'm going to actually disable one of these cameras just because we don't need to see that. Yeah. Okay. That way you can just focus on only my little station here. Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope this is going to be okay. I hope the frame rates are all right. Let me know if it sucks, but otherwise, hi Joni. I'm recording this for you mostly, but anyone else who wants to watch it, that's fine. But these three in particular are ones that I really like, these three granulating paints. They all use different pigments, except for Potter's Pink. That one's a repeat. And that brings me kind of to a point that there are a number of different pigments that are really good at being in combinations for one reason or another. And so if you want to try to play on your own and experiment, there are a few that you might want to play with. So besides Potter's Pink, Viridian, which is a green pigment, is also really nice. Viridian is PG18, okay? Several different brands make Viridian. Potter's Pink, several make this one as well, although they're not all equal. This one in particular, there is a lot of variation in what you get. Schmincke probably has the prettiest one that isn't full of dyes. My Merry Blue has a gorgeous one, except I think a lot of it is dye rather than pigment. So Schmincke's got a beautiful one. Daniel Smith's is really pretty drab, but it's got the largest pigment molecules themselves, and they're very granulating, and they have a very low tint strength, which means they're not going to affect other colors very much. So you can kind of use it like a granulation medium, where you just add it to a mix of other colors in order to get the granulating effect of it. So you may want to play around with two different or more different Potter's Pinks. Cerulean Blue is another good one, and there's two different versions of Cerulean Blue. Daniel Smith makes both of them, but there's a PG35 and a PG36. The difference between them, the PG36 is slightly more green. It's been, they essentially took the pigment you get in regular cerulean blue, PB35, and they cooked it at a very high temperature. And so it essentially purifies it a little bit. It changes some of the characteristics a little bit. And so it becomes a little bit more green. It becomes slightly less granulating. So these two are both kind of fun to play with. Cobalt Turquoise is another really good one. Cobalt Green and Cobalt Blue. And you might be getting kind of a, oh, there's a lot of cobalts in there, eh? Well, yeah. Cobalts are going to be some of your most granulating pigments. They're really pretty cool. And you can get a fairly large variety of colors and granulation depending on how finely they grind the pigments, and or if they've got a lot of different sizes. So, you know, maybe let's say the average size of cerulean blue is, you know, let's say it's this big, but it can range everywhere from like this big down to pinprick, right? So how picky is the manufacturer with the pigment, and how selective are they? Do they just get a big sampling of it and then make their paint, or are they picking specific sizes of it so that they can get particular characteristics they like? So the color may be a little bit different with the molecules being all tiny or all big. That's what happens with the Potter's Pink, for example. So, yeah, so that's something you can think about. And let me get back to, on my screen here. Okay, so I'm going to show you, I'll paint a little bit with these and kind of show you how you could mix them on your own. Or you could buy the tube. So all three of these are a Schmincke paint. Now, That doesn't mean you need to buy the Schmincke version per se, although, you know, it'll be different if you use Potter's Pink from Daniel Smith and Ultramarine Blue from Da Vinci, for example. It'll look different than the Galaxy Violet that you get from Schmincke, or even what this would look like if you bought the constituents from different brands. Anyway, so the Galaxy Violet, both of these, so Ultramarine Blue, or PB29 anyway, is very granulating. PR233 Potter's Pink is granulating too. I do want to note that PB29 can be either French ultramarine or ultramarine blue. Okay, the difference is that French ultramarine is usually slightly warmer. It's slightly closer to violet, and it's also more granulating. And that's not a coincidence, because the larger pigment molecules of PB29 are a little bit more warm. They're a little bit more violet, and the bigger molecules are more granulating. So, yeah, whereas it's, you know, you get a little bit smaller and it becomes closer to ultramarine blue. And I could even, here I've got these two. So one thing I like to do with granulating paints too is watch what happens when you put them in some water. So if I put a wash down of just some clean water, and I'll invoke gravity here in a moment, but let me get this wet. Okay, and then if I grab a little bit of this pigment over here, and we tilt my board, make sure, and just kind of drop it in, you can see what it does. Yeah. Very pretty, huh? Yeah. And it's going to be able to go anywhere water exists, right? But you can see it sort of separates a bit, quite readily, actually. And probably that's because we're dealing with two very different molecule sizes. So the Potter's Pink molecules are generally larger than the ultramarine blue. So the pink ones are heavier and fatter, and they don't run as far, right? Whereas ultramarine blue would be able to kind of dash away faster because it's smaller. But both of them are granulating, which you can see that already. Yeah. Isn't that pretty? So this is Galaxy Violet. And even though there's no violet pigment in it at all, red and blue kind of make violet, right? And let's try to make some of that on our own. So if we use, let's do both of these blues, ultramarine blue and French. Okay, here's our regular ultramarine right there. And let's do our French over on the right. Because français et droit, French is right. And some Potter's Pink. I'll use this Schmincke one. Oh, I'm looking at up here at the Galaxy Violet, and just the way that the light's hitting it right now, it looks particularly sparkly to me. It's very pretty. Anyway, distracted. It's ADHD for you. Except rather than squirrels, I'm seeing pigments. I'm getting distracted. Okay. All right. So let me get a little bit of water here between these two. And if I bring over some blue, and if we bring over some pink. So it's the Schmincke Potter's Pink, but our Daniel Smith Ultramarine. And we're getting similar. You know, the blue that I have here seems a little bit more vibrant. A little bit different than Schmincke's version. And Schmincke in their ultramarine blue, they have, theirs is called, ultramarine blue finest, or finest ultramarine blue. I forget how they order the words, but what they mean by finest is not necessarily that it's like caviar, it's the very best. No, it's finest grind. So it's very finely ground, and it's made to be less granulating than typical ultramarine blue. So, and I know Daniel Smith is not going to jump into the finest grind, so we're looking at more likely a more granular ultramarine blue than what Schmincke would use. So let's look at what the French ultramarine is like then, because that's even more granulating, so it could be interesting. Okay, here's our pink, and I'm just going to grab a tiny, let's see, ooh, strong. I might need more pink. And that is the thing with Potter's Pink. It's such a low tint strength color or pigment that it kind of gets overpowered by the ultramarine blue, the French ultramarine even. Yeah. So this one you could probably replicate fairly easily on your own, though. You know, I would recommend, however, that you're using. I did Daniel Smith this time. That you're using either Daniel Smith or Schmincke's Potter's Pink. Okay, don't use Winsor Newton. They have hardly any pigment at all in their Potter's Pink. It's awful. It's all dyes and granulation medium, which is rubbing alcohol. And see, My Merry Blues, it has quite a bit of dye as well. But I like Schmincke and Daniel Smith. They are pretty reliable. So yeah, pretty nice. Right? It's a fun combination. If anything, these homemade or home blended versions of Galaxy Violet seem a little bit more loud, I guess, less subtle than Schmincke's tube of Galaxy Violet. So maybe you want to buy the premix Schmincke. That's fine too. I just know it costs more to buy Schmincke over here in the States than it would perhaps other places. So anyway, okay, Forest Blue. Let's look at this one. So this one uses cerulean blue chromium, the PB36 version, and then Mars Black. So Mars Black is essentially magnetite, which is an element. It's inorganic. It's a mineral. It tends to have a pretty large variety of kind of color influences. So it can be, I mean, it is a black, but it has some blue, anywhere from a blue to a yellow kind of flavor to it, so to speak. So, and that helps make sense as to why this color looks kind of green. Okay, this forest blue. It's not just ultramarine anyway. It's not a straight up blue. There's a lot of green into it because you're mixing this black that tends to go maybe kind of yellow with cerulean blue. Okay, so let's take a look at that one. And for that one, I just have Daniel Smith's Lunar Black, which is PBK11. I don't have a lot of blacks from other brands because black is not a paint color that I typically would collect. But so here's that one. And this one is very granulating. It came out a little bit globular, and if that ever happens, guys, where the binder separates from the pigment and you've got this glob, one thing you can do while it's still in the tube is grab a toothpick and stick it in there and stir it around, and then try again. So that's normal though, it's not a big deal. But I wouldn't paint with just the globby, oily stuff, no. Okay, that, and then And I want to experiment with both of the cerulean blue versions, so I'm going to put the PB36 cerulean blue chromium closer here. And then I'll put the cerulean blue PB35 over here. Okay. So first off, let me show you a little bit of these blues so you can see what they look like naked. Naked. Okay. So regular cerulean blue right here. Again, this one's more granulating. These are big molecules, and they are granulating, so you can kind of see. And they have a very low tint strength too. The cerulean blue chromium has a higher tint strength. It's a stronger color, and it's more blue. See that? And it moves in the water more quickly too, if you noticed. Okay. So you can see how that one does have a finer grind, right? There's this one's got chunkier bits of pigment, and it's not as bright, it's not as vibrant. Okay. Alright, and then let's take a look at just this black. Some of that. Let me get more water here. Okay, so you can see that the black here is also granulating. And yeah, I mean, this one is really nice and chunky too. Good old Daniel Smith. And that's part of why they call it lunar black, because they're, you know, the inspiration, I guess, is that it's like the surface of the moon, very pockmarked and, yeah, kind of granular looking like that. Okay, so we were dealing with two very granulating colors. Okay, so let's try these two together, the PB36 and our Mars Black. With some water. Oh yeah, nifty. So it's not quite hitting that same greenish shade yet, but this is also wet to dry, right? And there might just be more of the blue, or maybe not, you know. You gotta play with it. That's the only thing about mixing them on your own, right? The disadvantage is you have to kind of figure it out a little bit. There. Okay. It's an interesting color though. Look at how granular that looks. It almost looks like I threw salt at it, and I haven't. But yeah, I mean, that is just chunky fun. And the black and the blue clearly separate and pull away from each other. So if I had to guess, I mean, look at the Schmincke. I'm going to say that they ground their black up even finer too. I mean, the black is not as granular looking. So let me pull some of this out again, fresh. Yeah, I mean, it's, right now it's not settled yet, but and that's just a much finer grind. Those colors are really ground into each other, you know. Yeah. Don't forget, you know, it's the differences between brands and the binders that they use, and, you know, the binder to pigment concentrations. They could be using humectants, things that make it wetter, allow it to stay wet longer. Could also be using dispersants. Dispersants help the pigments move in water. So there's any number of variations that could contribute. And this is one, I picked this one on purpose because this is one that I actually like to make myself, blend myself, rather than relying on this pre-mixed version, because I like the way that the pigments interact more here. I can get more variation. Now, this regular cerulean blue is going to look, I think, a little bit more like the Schmincke version. Let's double check though, if I remember how these played together. Yeah, it sort of does. I'm still too heavy in the black, I think, but yeah. The characteristics of the granules themselves look a little bit more aligned with the way that Schmincke's is. They could have also selected some other characteristics of PB36 that we're not necessarily thinking of. So PB36 is usually zinc heavy. So zinc, aluminum, silicon, selenium are common minerals that are found in PB36, okay? Kind of as part of the mix. And it's possible Schmincke could have asked their pigment supplier, hey, I want a more aluminum heavy version, or I want a zinc heavy version, or whatever. And I suspect that there's also some of that into play then. So they're very picky about their mineral in this case. Okay, and we still, again, don't know which binders and or additives that they are necessarily using. Schmincke uses gum arabic, and they tend to not use a lot of additives, right? They tend to be pretty straightforward as a brand. But maybe they made an exception in a few cases, so who knows. But I do like the, so I like the cerulean blue chromium that Daniel Smith makes with the lunar black that they make too. I think that's more what I like about this combo. Okay, and glacier green looks pretty similar actually, to just the way some of these look, except these are two completely different pigments. So this one uses potter's pink and cobalt green. Okay, another one of those cobalts. So let's see, got some regular cobalt green here, and again you'll get some variation between brands based on the size of the pigment molecule they use and the additives, etc. And then potter's pink. So let's go with the Schmincke one again. Maybe this time I'll start with this guy again. Yeah. So again, I'm seeing this, this cascade of colors that start to kind of come down together, and you can kind of see them clump up together in action, right, in real time, and they are pretty finely ground. I mean, those granules that are sticking together, those clumps, are not particularly large. So I'm thinking again, Schmincke just ground them up really, really small. But you can see sort of bands. So I see a band of potter's pink, and then it becomes a little bit more green, and then another band of potter's pink. So it kind of makes some striations on their own. Very pretty. You can see that over here too. So I see more green right in here, and then it goes a little bit more potter's pink, and then a little bit more green, and then a little bit more of the pink again. So very interesting. Okay, and like also clumps with like. So the potter's pink molecules like to granulate with each other and clump together. They don't necessarily like to team up and clump up with other pigments. It's just they've got a different electrochemical charge. You know, it's like bands with like in these cases. Alright, so, oh, I wanted to use Schmincke's, yeah. Schmincke Potter's Pink. Okay. And then here is my cobalt green. Oh, wrong one. Here we go. And I did bring out some Cascade green too. There's a few more of Daniel Smith's that I really like, but I just kind of picked like 3 that I particularly enjoy. That doesn't mean they're my favorite 3 necessarily, because I don't know that I have a favorite 3. But yeah, I like some of the Shire ones too. Yeah, Shire Yellow and Shire Green are really pretty, from Schmincke. And you go, whoa, that's not even close to the color I see on one, you know, on the left side. Well, yeah. They probably picked some very different cobalt green characteristics. And I don't I don't really like Daniel Smith's cobalt green, actually. It's too greeny. I wonder if I have anyone else's. I don't like this combo though. Let me try. See, that's too brown. Ugh. There is another version of like cobalt green, the PG50. So you can also get, like from Kramer Pigments, you can buy a powder that's like cobalt green blue shade. And I think that's probably what Schmincke got, but it's still PG50, right? Let me see if I can pull it up on their website really quick. PG50. And show you. Oh yeah, see, okay. Oh, ha 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 ha. I bet it was cobalt blue turquoise light. Okay. Alright, I'm going to share my screen with you guys so you can check this out. Let's see if I can do that this way or not. Add, let's see, display capture. Yeah, I might have to stop and restart my stream if I was going to show you this, actually. Okay. Probably, unfortunately. Yeah, I don't think I can. Okay, what I'm going to do, after this, I will put in the comments of this video anyway. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 different versions of PG50 that you can buy just from Kramer Pigments. Okay, Kramer Pigments is one of the leading pigment suppliers and acquirers in the world. They've got a location in New York, but they're based out of Germany. And yeah, they've got cobalt blue turquoise light, PG50. They've got cobalt green, slightly bluish, PG50. Cobalt green, PG50. And retouching cobalt green. And that's a Kramer special. So that one is a little bit different in the way it looks. It looks like a lighter and more yellow green than what cobalt green looks like. This Daniel Smith cobalt green looks very typical for cobalt green PG50, but the slightly bluish one, and then of course the cobalt blue turquoise light, that looks exactly like what Schmincke used. Maybe I can pull out, let's see, I think I have one of those actually. Let me see if I can grab one and show you. Here's that one. And it's going to be in one of these two. Signature pairs. Here we go. Cobalt turquoise. Not quite the same pigment, but it still is going to give us an idea of how much variation we can get from PG50. Okay. So, even though this is not PG50, this looks a lot. It looks similar, quite similar to cobalt blue turquoise light. Okay, so if I was to mix this guy with our pink, now we're getting exactly what glacier green looks like. So, glacier green with some big asterisks of, hey, it's not really green, it's turquoise, yo. Yeah. Yep, look at that. That's exactly it. So Schmincke didn't use your typical PG50 at all. It used the cobalt turquoise to make this color. Yep. Anyway, so there we go. There's some different granulating combos. Joni, I hope you enjoy these. If I had to pick some favorites, I use Galaxy Violet's a favorite. I like Galaxy Pink too, which I didn't pull out. But these are some of my favorite ones from Schmincke. From Daniel Smith, I like Cascade Green quite a bit. Cascade Green has a brown in it, a brown pigment. It is raw sienna, I believe. It's PBR7, but it's towards the raw sienna end of the spectrum. And then it's also got phthalo blue. Okay, so there's actually no green pigment in this tube at all. Another one that I like is probably the Serpentine Genuine, which is one of their Primatex. That one gives us kind of this, well, it gives us some green, and it gives us this orangey brown as well, and then a tiny hit of red every now and then. It's really quite striking. So that one's a favorite. Let's see, another one of Daniel Smith's. Undersea. Yeah, Undersea Green. That one's very pretty. Let's see. I think that one. Put that one out just so we can see what pigments. I know it's got. Yeah, Undersea Green has got ultramarine blue and PO48 quinacridone gold and a nickel azo yellow PY150. So it's got 3 different pigments in it, none of which are green, but it makes this a beautiful color. Here, I'll do this one really quick. Right here. Undersea Green. Okay. See? Oh, it's like kelp and seaweed, and it's lovely. And it changes color just a little bit the more you dilute it. So what it looks like at mass tone is a different color than what it looks like when you've got it so very diluted. Just a little bit anyway. And then let's do our Cascade Green for the fun too. So this one is pretty. And this last holiday, actually, Daniel Smith came out with a limited edition of the Cascade green, but they called it something else, and it's got some essential oil in it for the smell. Oh, but see, look at this one. Oh my gosh, I just love Cascade green. So again, phthalo blue for this one, and PBR7, so raw sienna. Yeah, isn't that gorgy though? Very pretty. Much more subdued than your typical phthalo, but it's still punchy and a little bit stronger than stronger in color than many of the other, kind of granulating combinations. So it's very pretty. Anyway, so these are a few of my favorite things, Joni. Have a good one. Thanks, everyone.